Let us begin. Here we have an LTD ESP LTD EC 256. Look, this is Sean's. It's a nice single cutted double humbucker creature, 3 controls, 2 volumes, 1 tone with a coil split on the tone, and it's a pretty beastie. I've had a play of this beforehand and I didn't like the tuners. Oh, what was that? Electric shock? No. The tuners were grinding under load, which I didn't think was very good. So we've got some replacements in on my recommendation. So these are 19:1 ratio tuners. They're Wilkinson's, but decent quality. And what I've got prepared here is a adjustable Tusq nut to replace this horrible plastic thing. You can see that, it's just grim. I wish they wouldn't spoil their otherwise good guitars with that sort of thing. Anyway, that's ready to go on. I did the sizing and sanding and shaping off camera, just because I was listening to a Star Wars story tape thing, not tape audio, somebody's YouTube actually. I don't know about you, but I had Star Wars audio things with lots of soundtracks from the film when I was younger. Anyway, so well, yeah, you might notice my little, not very clever innovation. I just put little string grabbers on the edge of my thing there, just because I got tired of not having anything to latch them onto. Now, of course, they're too far down, because I have to let off a ton of slack. But despite that, it's only a matter of a few more turns, and it makes a lot better sense to have the nut slot free. There was a lot of gunge on this nut slot, a lot of glue went on to making that thing fit, and you can see there's still more up there, but it's level at the moment. That's the thing, I don't want to keep cutting away. Some stuff came off the bottom of here, not an awful lot, but there's more glue in that slot. But the main thing was to get it level so this would fit and we start off in the right place, which is now absolutely fine. And my start point for this nut is to have it sitting on the shelf with the strings, with everything wound down, so the nut sitting at its lowest and the strings touching the first fret. That's where I want to start, and then obviously raising the adjustable top makes lets you set it up to the perfect height. So I'm basically ready to go and level this guitar. Now, if I recall, this guitar had some choke outs, and I've written them in my notebook and didn't bring my notebook, but that's okay, because we'll just we'll do the leveling, and that will take care of everything as usual. I'm just cleaning up the end of this adjustable nut base. Yes, so I hope you have been well. I had so many very kind birthday greetings on Facebook. Couldn't believe it. Hundreds of people nearly. Well, lots of people stopping in to say, wish me happy birthday. So I was very touched by that. Thank you very much, everyone. I didn't realise people cared. So I'm going to put this and attach it right now, because I know that it's already at the correct height. I've checked that. So let me just lightly place this. Yeah, so I had a nice birthday, and I just did nothing. And for me, a great birthday is relaxing more than anything else, just relaxing, and I can promise you that is exactly what I did. Not a lot more other than relaxing. Yeah, I mean, when you get to our age, that's all you want to do, really. So I've just FYI, I've marked up the frets here with marker pen, so I'm ready to do the leveling when the time is right. So what I'm doing now is I'm just putting on the middle strings here, tightening them up a little bit, loading them so that I can pull the nut down into place. Loading that up, and the other side. on here. That's now, I had that down touching the thing. Just make sure that's where I want it. If not, I will tap it off and take it that bit further down. Let's just try it one more time. Had it pretty, it's fine actually, but I just like, out of discipline, I like to have it sitting on the first fret. It actually doesn't matter if it's very slightly above it either, because obviously we want to go up to 0.3 mils. Let's have a look. Whoops, that's off the edge here. That won't help at all. Very good. This is just let's have a look. It doesn't, as I say, it doesn't actually have to sit on the deck. That's what I sort of like to start with, but that's perfectly fine for an actual tuning. So let me get a tune up. Okay, I don't want to play too much because I obviously don't want the marker pen to come off, so I'm just going to stretch it a tiny bit just to stop it from being too out of tune. Okay, and check the playing actions here. We're good. Right, so now I'm just going to get out the fret leveling stuff. This should be a pretty smooth, fingers crossed, touch wood, a smooth operator, because it's a good standard setup. In other words, these 3-a-side tuner type guitars really like the Tusq adjustable nut. It works really well. It brings brings back rock solid tuning, which you won't get with a plastic nut, no matter how hard you try. So we get a nice tuning stability out of it, and yeah, we should get a really nice setup. There's nothing surprising about this. So there we go. We'll just get straight into fret leveling. Had a little rant the other day on video. You may have seen it, where I quite regularly get well-meaning but rather set in their ways, or set in their opinions, fixed in their opinions, people who leave a comment and tell me that what I'm doing here is really terrible, and that the fret dust that I'm creating here obviously gets stuck in all of the pickups and gums them up, and it doesn't. First of all, it stays exactly where I put it, and you notice I'm not cutting it on the pickups, but it stays where I put it. And the other reason it doesn't go anywhere is because it's not magnetic. And some people just have a really hard time accepting that. We've got a really high fret here, by the way, just for your info. Yeah, everything else sort of, we've got a low spot right at the end, a little low bit here, a bit here, low, very high, a little bit low, normal. So there's a couple of ups and downs in here, which is no surprise. But yes, so you know, people just seem to get quite insistent that they know best, and that if I am leveling the frets, then the fret dust definitely must be going into the pickups, onto the magnets, the poles. Oh, I'll tell you what I didn't do. It's not the end of the world, because I can level with any. That's actually perfect. I didn't check the amount of relief or the action at the other end. So that's what I'll just double check the playing action. I think I might have set it at home, but I can't remember now. Anyway, yeah, so that people insist on telling me that I shouldn't do it, and it's definitely going to get the pickups covered in fret dust. So I did a little experiment the other day just for fun, to prove that there is no magnetic attraction with fret dust. It doesn't attract. And if you saw that video, you'll see me using a very powerful neodymium magnet, doing my very best to try and attract a small piece of nickel steel fret wire, which is what this stuff is on here and what most guitars have on them. And you would have seen on the video that it did absolutely nothing. So there was nothing attractive about the fret wire. No magnetic potential whatsoever. So I'm just going to show you for your info. This one here, look at that for a flat fret or a high fret. That's pretty high. Look at that one, hardly touching the one next door, and barely touching the one before it. So that's a definite high fret that we're taking care of, and that will interfere with play. So yeah, anyway, so that's where it came down to, and so I then did a same test with stainless steel, and that, as I knew, has no attractiveness for magnets at all either. But the surprise of the day was that Evo Gold fret wire, which I'm told has titanium in it, some titanium in it, so lo and behold, that actually was very, very lightly attracted to the neodymium magnet. You know, and actually, when you actually looked at it, it only barely just pulled a piece of Evo Gold fret wire towards it, unlike any other piece of ferrous stuff, which the magnet's so powerful it, you know, lifted off the bench with a big clang. It's good. The only one of three that had any sign of magnetism at all was the Evo Gold, and even then that was very, very mild. I mean, in response to an extraordinarily powerful neodymium magnet, 1/2 inch one or 3/4 inch one, I think it was, it barely pulled, only just managed to pull the Evo Gold towards it. So that was the test done. So having done thousands of guitar levelings, I know full well that the dust doesn't go anywhere near the pickups. I mean, it goes on the body here, and the paper one, well, that does when I'm sanding out, you get dust on it, but it doesn't stick to the pickups at all. It doesn't go anywhere near them, and it certainly isn't attracted to them, as I demonstrated. And actually, even when I level Evo Gold frets, it's so weak an attraction that any dust could be lifted off with a piece of tape, even if you had any, but I still don't get any there because it's such a weak attraction. It simply will not pull dust from the frets up towards the thing. There's a really low pair there, so that's a ditch we've got there. That's high, but not as high as it was at the edges. Everything else is cutting okay. So low, so normal, or high, low, sorry, normal, low, normal, high, normal, 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 low-ish. So all the little topography of the guitar neck showing up now. So I've done the through to the G at this point in time, and the thing to check at this point is that the G works. That's the first thing. So all notes are good. And then bends. Now these are very slightly choking out there, but they are so far over into the almost past the G track, which is over the top of the hill in inverted commas. So I'm going to do a tiny bit more on the G track at the far end, and then we'll go on to the D track, which will be the tail end of those bends. You can't really, the geometry starts working backwards on you if you go over the top of the arch of the hill. And your strings are going down the other side, and they're bound to, by the laws of geometry, they're bound to hit the fret metal. There's no way they can't. So that's as good as we're going to get, which is pretty good. So yeah, that was my little point on magnetism and fret wire. Grr. But I'm absolutely convinced that some people will still arrive and tell me the same thing over and over again. Anyway, so now I'm doing the A track. So we've had since my birthday on Monday, I took it easy on that day. I did a bit of work at the workshop anyway, because I liked to, I enjoyed it. It wasn't like a chore. I didn't need the whole day off. And on that night, what did I do? I removed the original custom shop nut on Craig's custom shop Strat. And removed the original nut. I can't really say how bad the nut itself was straight from the custom shop factory, if you like, workshop, because I think it could well have been worked on by another luthier. Well, another luthier tech did something, and I think probably lowered the nut slots, and I think didn't do it very well. But it was either them that didn't do that very well, or it was that way from the factory, one of the two anyway. But by the time I got it, it wasn't really the bone. The slots were all wrong, and I did my best to even them out, which I did. But then I still wasn't happy with the amount of friction in it. So I just thought, we agreed. I finished the video of the setup, and then we agreed off camera kind of thing, and a call bit in an email a bit later that let's just why don't we do it, replace it. And I said Casey wanted to revert to bone, because I think that's what he wanted, to keep an original bone. I said, well, I'm going to I'll make you another one, and I'll match it or fit it at the same time. I'll put on a Tusq one, perfectly fitted, with the first fret action set right, and before I fit that one, I'll make a second one out of bone, so that if you want to, you can just remove the other one at a later date, and the bone one will drop straight in as well. So I did that, and we got a much more stable tuning out of it, which was great, particularly since we had the tremolo set up floating, so that makes such a difference. So that went this morning back to Craig, and fingers crossed he gets it safe and sound tomorrow. Yeah, fingers crossed, and fingers crossed it's now the way he wants it to be. Because a lot of people had a view on that that particular guitar being, you know, £4 worth to purchase from the Fender custom shop, which is a lot of money to have to do extra work. And there was also, you know, quite a bit of ow, stabbed me with a string. Yeah, quite a bit of work that had to be done. It appears that the plec job that was done on it wasn't really adequate, and a lot of people made comments about the plec machine, saying that, you know, it is only as good as the operator, which in a funny sort of way I sort of get that, and I understand exactly what they're saying, but it would strike me as a bit of a mad thing, really, is to say that we've got this, I don't know, 200,000, I'm guessing, 200 grand machine or something, and it's all scientific and wonderful, but unless the guy using it really, or person using it, really knows what they're doing, it can achieve nothing, or less than nothing. It seems a bit odd for a machine that's supposed to, you know how to do this thing. But anyway, so never having been involved with one close enough to really evaluate what does or doesn't work in respect of it, it's very difficult to have any, or to, you know, make a statement about it. What I do, this one's flat all the way across and at this end as well. I mean, it's high at the end as well. Anyway, so I don't really have any meaningful comment to say, other than I did read some documents about it once, and from what I could see, the one thing it didn't replicate, it seemed to put the, I don't know, neck under low, no, put the, I could be wrong, it seemed to, hang on, could be wrong, it seemed like they measured the curvature of the neck when the strings were on, and then they put it in the machine with the strings off, and then bent the neck to reproduce the curvature. And that one is now a fraction low. Now I can see the tops of the frets much better. I'm just going to raise this a tiny widget, nice and low. Okay, so I'm happy with that as the leveling. That's the precision leveling part done, but we've got the crowning and the sanding and polishing to do yet. So this is the first stage of it. Yeah, so anyway, I just, from what I read, and it was only, you know, a few pages of stuff at a particular time that I got to read, and I just had a feeling that the plec may miss out or not accommodate the longitudinal compression of the neck, which my leveling method, I don't mind, but the method I use definitely takes into consideration. So, and if that's true, then it would explain why a number of plec necks that I've worked on, I was able to further improve with my technique. But I can't be 100% sure that that is what's going on, but it seemed to me that, from what I read about the process, it seemed that may be the case. Because what I know is that the plec machine doesn't level with the strings on, and so it can't level with the neck under compression, end-to-end compression. I think it seemed like to me that the nearest they got was to simulate the bend, or reproduce the bend or the relief in the neck, but not the compression part of it. So I think that's quite significant. It is quite significant sort of oversight in the technical side of things. Now I'm struggling with this technique that Sean has of putting a little hook in the strings. It isn't necessary. I'll show you how I do it at the end. but you really don't need to put those little catches in. If you do, you mainly just increase the likelihood of a tech causing some damage around the headstock because of the fact they have to poke out little bits of tied up string with a sharp object, pokey object. Anyway, so I think what I'll do now before I start sanding and crowning is, while I got the headstock denuded, I think I'll take the old tuners off and put the new ones on, and then we can clean the headstock at the same time, which gives it a chance to look fresh and sparky or sparkly. When it comes to changing tuners, I only ever really recommend changing them on the basis that it makes the tuning process smoother. Not that it holds the guitar in tune during playing any better, because it doesn't. It's, in fact, I like to go on about how the tuners play to all intents and purposes, play no role whatsoever in the tuning stability of your guitar. The only reason why it's good to have better quality tuners is because of the smoothness and the gearing and or the looks and the materials used. They can be very cool looking and nice and smooth to operate. But the tuning stability comes from two places: the condition and material of the nut, so the right material that's friction free, and the slots to be cut to the right height and to be free running and friction free. And if you get those aspects of the nut right, that's 50% of your tuning stability, and the other 50% is getting rid of all the slack, unreleased slack in your strings. And if you pay attention to those two things, your guitar will stay in tune regardless of whether you've got vintage pressed chrome, those cheap pressed tin tuners, or whether you've got expensive something else, can't think of them. Whoop, blimey, Spurzels or Goto or something. So what I'm looking to do is replace with very similar tuners, only on these it will be the kidney bean shaped ones, and they're 19:1 ratio. So I think these are 15:1 anyway, but it wasn't really the lack of, or the lower ratio, that bothered me. It was the slightly grindingness when I was tuning. Of course, that wouldn't have been helped massively by the plastic nut either. But the two of those things together would make an less than enjoyable tuning experience. So I'm just going to give this a quick rub down, because it gets dusty and grubby over the years. And let's see, with the 45-degree fixing screw angle on these things, they should be a straightforward replacement. It's not necessarily always the case that they line up perfectly. You've got little bits of bleeding. I suppose it keeps them clean. Little bits of plastic over the things. So that fits through. That's good. And the key thing is lining up the 45-degree hole. Let's have a quick look. Yes, I think we can say that fits. I'll tell you what, before I do that, I should probably clean the back as well. It's not really grubby, it just needs a nice dust down before we start fixing things to it. Okay, so typically what I would do is I would put the new tuner on the back, attach the holding screw to locate it, and that really just positions it, and then after that we'll do the nut up from the other side. So let's take off the plastic. Yeah, so tuners, go for higher gearing if you're going to invest in a few quid. Just look for the higher gearing, and companies like Wilkinson are usually, occasionally you get one that isn't right, just like any brand, but most of the time Wilkinson make very good solid products, especially tuners. Okay. Oh, let's put it on the right side, Samuel. So yesterday, although it wasn't planned, I've been sort of hovering around looking for a body for the neck that I upcycled the other day, or over the last few days, which was a really cheap Chinese saffron yellow coloured Strat style neck, and it was pretty horrible. It didn't really feel like a Strat neck at all, and it had that garish bright yellowy orangey colour that was the over coloured attempt at amber and looking old, but it had that I kind of inherited it from a job where I'd recommended somebody put a different neck on. They had a very nice quality parts caster, and it just seemed really silly to put this horrible cheap neck on it. Anyway, so I sanded it all back, reshaped it a little bit. Lordy. Now this is where I would like these screws to be magnetic, because this would really help. Upcycled it, and I refretted it, or yes, to pull the frets out, I re-radiused it and refretted it with Evo Gold. Just sort of going hell for leather into making it a neck that I could live with. And I also put some huge, great abalone dot markers, great big 10mm ones, or 12, I can't remember. Anyway, and so I was kind of thinking, shall I look out for a body for this? Because I knew that the neck was a narrow gauge one, so the kind of size that would fit a Sun Mustang or an Indian Encore body. So I thought, well, I look out for one of those, or maybe should I make one from scratch? So I was kind of toying with one of the other ideas, and then yesterday morning I came across a couple of Encores for sale in Plymouth on eBay, 40 quid for two. One of them I could see was a Indian one, black with white pick guard, but the body then would fit with my neck, and the way you'd go, I could then I've been sort of thinking, well, shall I sort of spend a bit and get some figured wood like a swamp ash and make a really pretty grained, heavily grained one to go with this neck, and really sort of enjoy the grain on it, or should I? Anyway, well, I didn't think of much else, and then of course when I found these two on eBay, I bought them, and then we made a trip into Plymouth, did a few other things, and went round to the St Luke's Hospice shop and picked these up, and sort of changed my mind. I thought, okay, I will probably paint this now. I'll start with this black body, and the body is actually a black limber wood, but it's obviously painted in polyurethane paint, poly finish. So I thought, well, okay, I've got a choice now. I can either strip it back and use it as bare wood, but you don't get a choice over the pieces of timber. They're usually quite off. They're all different sort of grades of wood, and so they tend to look like three pieces of timber slammed together. It never looks that. It looks nice and it looks kind of punkish, but it never looks like a natural timber guitar, the way you'd really want with either a book match two-piece swamp ash or a single piece of nice mahogany, or that other stuff, regular ash, American ash. Anyway, so I ended up taking the black body off it, sizing the neck to fit, and lo and behold, there's my upcycled neck, which is a maple neck with a gloss fingerboard and huge dots. And I've just kind of sized it to fit into this, so I'm thinking that I will now just concentrate on respraying that body another colour. I mean, it could be black, you know, if I didn't really want to put a ton of time into it. I was kind of half and half about how to do it, and then my mum was saying, I want to get you something special for your 60th birthday, and I'm going, I don't need anything. And then she sort of insisted, and I thought, well, why don't you get me a really nice looking piece of timber? And she was a bit surprised at first, because she turns out she'd bought my brother a piece of jewellery, you know, to have remember her by, because she's 81 this year. And I think she had something like that in mind, and I'm not a jewellery type of person, so I think for a minute she was a bit surprised, and I had to kind of persuade her to say, you know, a guitar that I make with a special piece of wood and keep for myself, you know, is something that's always going to be with me, and realistically it's going to get passed on to my kids at some point as well, as are some of my favourite guitars that I've made. In fact, only ones I've made will be passed on, really. Don't have any attachment to the other types. I've only got one name guitar, funnily enough, name brand. So I'm coming up on the flattened fret, so I'm just getting ready for that to be a bit more of a crowning struggle. Here it is, lots of flatness. Actually not the end of the world, really, just more than the others. Anyway, so I'm currently in that point of thinking about what would if I wanted to make a guitar for myself and for my kids to inherit, that would be a tribute to my mum, or a reminder of my mum. I didn't really have it was difficult to imagine how I would start thinking about that, but I'm fairly confident that something will occur to me. Yeah, making a guitar that captures something of someone who's close to you. It's kind of easy if it's for somebody who's close to you and who plays a guitar and you're giving it to them, because you have a lot to go on. You know what they like, you know the music they like, you know the kinds of guitars they like to play. And but when it's in honour of somebody, a sort of in memory of somebody, but not for them, it's kind of a bit more interesting. I thought about doing a guitar with a big, as a Trinidad flag, because my mum's from Trinidad, as I am, and her family, she grew up there, and her family goes back there a long time. You know, and I don't need my arm twisting to make a big, bright red, black and white Trinidad and Tobago flag guitar. You know, because it's straight lines, it would be quite easy to do a spray version of it rather than, you know, a hand-painted acrylic type of job. But that doesn't celebrate the wood. That could be, you know, it could be poplar underneath that for all it mattered. So I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, look, that's the crowning part of things done. So we're moving along quite nicely. I'm going to clean up the fingerboard here just now. Nice thing about taking the or the method of leveling I do is I know that once I restring this guitar, whatever happens, I could take all the parts off completely, come back to it later, and put them all the parts on, and then restring, and I know that it will go back to the chosen playing action that I set while I leveled it, and I can go back to that playing action, dial it in on the bridge and on the nut and on the neck relief, and I know that there'll be no problem at all. The frets will be leveled to play at that action, which is very good. So it's a nice thing to have confidence in. And I got a great message through yesterday. I didn't do any workshop time yesterday, but I got a brilliant email yesterday from Mark, who got his Gordon Smith back with the new bridge that solved his string slipping off the edge of the fingerboard problem. When originally he thought of it, he'd just kind of come to the conclusion, understandably, that it would need a refret to try and change the size of the playing area on the frets to cure this problem. And I kind of thought about it a bit more and realised that we could do it with a replacement adjustable width bridge, which was a nice way of doing it because we didn't have to ruin a perfectly good set of frets, and we got the space back that he needed to play. And to get the email back from him saying it's perfect was very rewarding, and it kind of made me feel extremely grateful and thankful to be, at that age in my life, being, well, relatively speaking, pretty well, pretty healthy, and to be doing stuff that I enjoy and that matters to me with guitars for other people, to make them smile. And actually I felt, yesterday I felt that really nice warm feeling of, I think, I've got to a place where, actually somebody said it in the comments, birthday comments, somebody said you're in your groove, and they were right. I'm in that place where I don't really, very rarely does it not work out for a customer that what I do, it doesn't suit them. It's very rare now. And it's a lovely place to be in because I can just get on and do the work and enjoy the process. But with the confidence of knowing that apart from a very few chance or remote random occasions, it's going to be just right for them. Okay, so I'm going to go off camera and put on some radio while I mask off the whole of the neck, and then I'm going to do the polishing thing offline because it's dusty and boring. And I'll come back when this is all sanded out, polished, and the neck's oiled, and we'll put the new strings on and get it all up to speed. So I'll see you in a little bit. Great, we are ready for the restringing. So the polishing has all been done, sanding and polishing out, and I've oiled the fingerboard. So we're ready to put strings on it. And the important thing with the string part of it is just to get the sequence right, and to get the minimum amount of string on the peg, and not so much that it stores up any extra, or as little extra slack as possible. Ernie balls. So I'll just run these through from this end. 942s these are. So the main thing about this whole part now is getting the strings on properly, stretching them out fully, and then once that's done, checking the intonation and tweaking it if necessary. And once we got the nut right, which we now have, we've got the Tusq, which is the Teflon coated, or not coated, impregnated, Teflon impregnated plastic material, and the slots are not cut so that we lift them up from a low height to the right height, so they're using the factory smooth slots, so there's nothing to constrict the string. So that's free running because of the type of slots. We've got the correct first fret action, which stops strings going sharp on the when fretted down by the nut, and we've got everything as good as possible as we can have with the nut. And now we just take care of the strings and the slack, and then we have solid tuning stability. So here's how I do it. With the adjustable nut, because this middle piece can come off, okay, just if it does, pop it back in, and then pull it tight all the way through, and then pull back a fret's worth, and start winding on, and hold on to this tight part, right, keep it under tension while it winds on. So take it over the loose piece of string first, keeping it under tension, and then guiding it underneath the loose string. As the string comes around, I pull the string up out of the way. And so basically, by the time this tightens into place, you've got basically two loops there, and it's holding the string in a kind of a little locking mechanism as well. So that's that one. So if you do the D and the G first, that will mean that you've got the nut locked safely in place. It won't go off sideways. The nut insert part, the middle top bit of the nut is what I mean. So the same on the other side, a bit of finger gymnastics onto the saddle, hold it on the first fret, pull it back one fret, then hold it with your thumb and wind on over the loose string first of all, like that, and then as it comes round, you'll lift up the loose string, keep the held string under tension all the time, and direct it underneath the loose string as it comes round that time, and then hold it down into the slot, and there you have it. So these two now are in place, and they're holding the string, holding the nut firmly in place. The great thing about this Tusq nut is it has splayed strings, which this one doesn't. This is a straight through nut. Some people think one is better than the other. In fact, they're both as bad as each other, or as good as each other. They're bad if they're made from plastic or bone, in my experience, because three-a-side headstocks do force the string to come out at an angle, whether it's at the front going in at an angle or coming out at an angle. There is some extra tension whether we like it or not, so that means that you're going to get some pressure on the nut. But the important thing is, if it's Tusq, it can handle it perfectly well. So these splayed strings work perfectly well and don't cause any there's no grabbing of the string that gets in the way, so it works really well. Through, back one, hold, wind it over the loose one, it comes round, guide it under the coil, yank the loose one up out of the way, and then sneak in there and cut this off. It's a bit difficult with the other strings around. Mind you don't cut two at once. Now for the B, same thing, reverse version. Now in the movement of taking the bridge and the stop bar off to do the sanding and polishing, it's quite possible that the bridge post may have been wound up or down or whatever. So we don't assume that it's the right action once we put it back on, but it's easy enough to reset it. this off here before it goes round underneath. Becomes inaccessible. Okay, last one. Back to there. Hold it down, let it go round. Up it comes. Remove. Okay, get rid of my wrappings. Right, so I'm just going to first of all just gently pull the strings to bed them in place. 9s are delicate, so if you don't want to break them, don't pull them too hard. Okay, so I'm now going to put this to an approximate tune. Glue. What's that stuff? Masking tape. Glue on the back of the neck. Just get that off. Green tape on the strap button. Okay, so strings are on. Time to do the first proper stretch. I don't know what you can see. I'm sorry, I've probably messed up the view completely. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I'll check the action first. So, now, I made a decision to move the saddle nut. I put the nut of its two possible positions. I put it slightly privileging the high E because I wanted it to get, it comes in, the neck alignment, the bridge isn't perfect on this guitar, so I needed to get a bit more room at this side. I think it's done fine, but it's a choice. Right, let's check the main thing to check now is just the action down here. That is 1.5, that is barely 1.2, so, which is where we were. Target. Right, so now I'm going to physically stretch out these strings. Break my finger doing it. And that's pushing and pulling with thumb and forefinger. The wound strings will hold their slack longer, so it will take a while further to stretch them out. The intonation on here looks a little bit out on the D, so we'll see. Too far forward on the D. I expect it to be sharp. We shall see. So I'm going to stretch all this out, tune up, and then stretch again. So you might, realistically, the smart money would be on stretching these strings out until it doesn't go out of tune when you stretch them each time. We go again. Stretch. 2, 3, 4 times, as many times as you can do it to stop it detuning. And once you're there, it will stay in tune forever, providing the nut slots are right as well. If you get the slack stretched out the strings perfectly well, but your nut slots are still tight, binding, catching, dragging against the string, then it doesn't matter how de-slacked your strings are, the nut will still put the guitar out of tune, because it'll hold a difference in pressure on the string either side of the nut. So it's very close. Good, flat. So I'm going to put a little bit of a pull here. Get the final bit of the thick wound strings slack out. Still nearly in tune. Tuning stability reached. Now is the time to set the intonation. Excuse me. Intonation time. And the intonation is a physical property of the guitar. Let's just check the jack sockets tight, not loose. Good. So yeah, the intonation is a function of length. So each string has to have a slightly different length because of the material and the composition of each string, or thickness and the material composition of each string. So, by the joy of musical mechanics, if you've got the right length for the string you're testing, the pinged harmonic at the 12th fret, which I happen to be tuning to in E, should be the exact same note as the fretted note, the 12th. Harmonic tuned to E at the 12th. Pretty spot on. Slightly flat, only a tiny bit. When it's slightly flat, it means the distance of the length of the string is slightly too long. So we need to pull the string towards, the saddle towards the nut to shorten the playing length of the string, which I'm going to do now with my trusty screwdriver. I'm using this to support the bass. I don't want to run that. Oh, that should be alright actually. I don't like to press this on the ground. It's okay. So I go and tune again on the pinged harmonic. Pretty good. You can hear it's a little bit flat too. So, because I know the sequence that this should naturally fall into, because I know that sequence and I trust that sequence, I can basically set all the rest of these from there, and lo and behold we'll find they're in tune. But let's just demonstrate. I said that the D would be way too sharp. Let's try it out. Settles down right, but that's interesting. technically that's out of sequence. I'm going to push it back where it should be, because I don't like things out of pattern. Pattern breakers upset me. That should be there, and if it isn't right there, I shall cry. Fine, happy with that. We've got the pattern back. Everything's good. Trust the pattern, I always say. Okay, bang, crash, wallop. Guitar is intonated. Strings are stretched. Action set. Neck relief checked and set. Other things checked. Strap buttons checked. All tight. Everything works fine. Oh yes, the last little bit, we'll put the cover on here and then we'll be done, and that's it. So not a long video, straightforward one. I do love using these adjustable nuts. Oh yes, I do. And you know, it's a pleasure, because not only does it get the first fret action right, and I include the little hex key goes with the guitar so that you can adjust it later on if you wish to. Not only does it get the first fret action right, but it also allows me to, every customer who gets it back is always thrilled and pleased by the tuning stability that it gives immediately from the off, along with the stretched strings. So this now is ready to play and stay in tune. It's interesting actually, this has got a volute on here, quite a big one, and it reminds me of the one I made, which is actually almost in the same place. And mine feels a bit funny, it feels almost too big, but then so does this one. So that's an interesting detail. Right, that's me done. I get home before 10 o'clock tonight. No, home before 9 I think. Thank you for watching. I hope it was straightforward and nice and simple for you. These get put in a bag with the spare tuners and they can go back up with this. Good. Thank you. See you again soon.